Hey everyone, it's Pajama Ben here, and in today's video we're going to be going over the sales month of November because this shows what could potentially be a really big shift in the car industry. Before we get into this video though, as always, if you're going to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. Let's get into it. So before we fully dive into the video, I do want to mention that I do plan on making a follow-up video once Cox Automotive releases the national data for what happened in the sales month of November. But I know a lot of people in the car industry, and so I have a lot of information. We'll be going over that information in today's video. We're going to start with the bad news, and then we'll end things off on a positive note with the good news. And I'm sure most of you watching this video want to hear the bad news anyways. So starting with the not so good news, dealers did not do all that well in November compared to what they normally do historically and, month over month with the numbers. So most dealers saw a 5 to 10% decline in volume for the sales month of November compared to what they would normally expect to see in November. And this is with new cars and with pre-owned cars as well. It seemed like the whole market just contracted. And so, yeah, they're selling fewer cars. That is not good. And I'm not going to dive into the details as to why they're selling fewer cars because I've already talked about that in other videos. But yeah, November was not a great month. Now, the next thing that is not so great is going to be the amount of money that dealers are making from selling cars. Now, for me to be able to properly explain the situation that a lot of dealers are in today, I need to make a fake scenario to show you what dealers have experienced over the last few years. So I'm going to talk about a make-believe dealership and we're going to talk about how much money they made prior to the pandemic, during the pandemic, and then currently. And I'm just going to use the rough numbers in terms of, what dealerships experience in terms of the multipliers with this revenue. So prior to the pandemic, our fake dealership was seeing a gross revenue in the sales department of about, let's say, $500,000. Now this is between selling cars, right? The cars themselves, the warranties, and then maybe accessories put on those cars as well. So $500,000 in gross revenue. Now this is before paying any of the employees. So there's your number, right? Now the pandemic happens and this same dealership is now seeing $1.5 million in gross revenue, right? This is huge, a 3 times amount in terms of revenue. Now, obviously, that doesn't necessarily lead to 3 times as much in profit because then you got to pay everyone based on their pay plans a little bit more. And so the dealership principal, the person that actually owns the dealership, might not necessarily be seeing 3 times as much, but they're definitely be seeing more than if they had, in our scenario, $500,000 in gross revenue for the dealership. Now, things have obviously trickled down a bit since the pandemic, and this same dealership today is most likely seeing somewhere around that $500,000 in gross revenue. Now, that might sound like, hey, things are back to normal for dealerships. They're making the same amount of money today as they were prior to the pandemic. But the big problem is this thing called inflation, right? We saw the highest inflation that we have seen in a long time over the course of the pandemic. And so you have dealerships now seeing pre-pandemic revenues in terms of the at raw numbers, but we're in a world that doesn't have pre-pandemic pricing in terms of the cost of living. And so you can see how this is not a good situation for dealer principals, right? And then also for dealership employees. When it comes to, the dealership principals, the people that actually own these dealerships, this means that, despite the fact that they have to pay more money in interest for the inventory that they have, and they have to pay higher wages for their hourly wage employees, they aren't getting any more revenue to help fund that. So that is a big issue. And then the employees at the dealerships that get paid off of a commission basis, well, again, the cost of living has increased, but now they're in a situation where they are, again, making pre-pandemic levels of income in a post-pandemic world. So this is becoming a big issue, and this is something that I've kind of talked about over the course of several videos, but it's starting to become a bigger and bigger issue as time goes on. Now, I don't know exactly where the floor is going to be, but this example shows you that it looks like things basically went 3x for most dealerships during the pandemic, and now they're back to pre-pandemic levels in terms of revenue. And so this could cause a lot of people to leave the car business. I know a lot of people might not care about that, but it could also cause a lot of shifts in how dealerships actually run the business. Again, these dealer principals are in business to make money. And so if the dealership is no longer profitable for them, then they're going to have to reorganize things to try to make dealerships profitable. Now, I will talk about kind of what I think this leads into moving forward, but we'll quickly go over the good news for today's video. The positive news for dealerships is that service departments are still extremely robust. So despite the fact that sales departments are kind of on fire right now, dealerships are still seeing really healthy service department revenues. So new car dealerships are doing just fine right now. Again, their sales departments aren't feeling so good, but there's enough money in the service departments that everything is going well. So dealerships that don't do a lot of service department stuff like used car lots, those are the ones that are going to be really struggling in today's market. So I guess it's a positive and negative thing with the service, but I think it's mostly positive. And so now this will lead into talking about what this means for the car market moving forward. So if this trend continues where sales keep declining with new cars and with pre-owned cars, this is going to put dealership sales departments in a bad situation. And it's also going to put automakers in a bad situation as well, because automakers are continuing to ramp up production with vehicles, and it's like they're producing all these vehicles and people just aren't buying them. And so I think that if this continues, I mean, just basic supply and demand market dynamics, we're going to see some big discounts on cars. That's what manufacturers are going to have to do unless they want to pull back on production. But the problem is it's kind of like everything's out at this point. Like the production's already increased too much that the manufacturers can't pull back at this point. So I think we could see some pretty big discounts, not on all vehicles, but on certain vehicles. There's already some pretty big discounts out there. I made a video talking about that a couple of days ago. So too soon to tell on that, but if this trend continues with sales declining, get ready to see some price drops. Don't know how big they're going to be, but get ready to see some price drops. And then when it comes to dealership structure, I think this is something that is going to change immensely in the coming couple of years. So what I see happening first off is that I think dealerships are going to go and trim a lot of fat. So every single car dealership runs a little bit different depending on who the owner is. But there's kind of like a basic structure within dealers, and some dealers kind of add additions to that structure because the whole premise is, well, if they have these extra people, then they'll be able to sell more cars, business will run smoother, right? They'll make more money overall. But if we keep veering towards this market where dealers become less and less profitable because there's just less there's less things to be sold, and it's harder to make money off of those things that you can sell because they're just in oversupply, then I think we're going to see a lot of dealership roles just disappear. And I won't be surprised if we see a complete restructuring of the car business where it's more like what is seeming to happen with the real estate business, where it's going away from these big commissions, right? Within the real estate world, it used to be like the 6% commission thing, right? One agent would take 3%, the other would take 3%. And now you've got, I think it's called like Homey or whatever, where it is just a flat rate of like, I think it's like $3,500. I might be wrong. If you guys are in the real estate world, you know a little bit more than me. I think that's what we're going to be veering towards with the car industry. We're going to see where things are more focused on volume. And so you're probably going to see dealerships kind of decrease the amount of staff they have overall, especially management roles. I won't be surprised if a lot of management roles get cut just to decrease the amount of money they're spending. So then that's where they'll be able to become more profitable. So we'll see what happens on that front. I'll see you.